He's John Timpane.
And he's Don Rooney.
And this is
The Musical Innertube.
Now, you may ask, why is this podcast called The Musical Innertube?
And we may reply, because that's its name, of course.
Now, how did this podcast get that name?
Back in college, we hosted a radio show. Once, we tried to introduce a soothing musical interlude.
Instead, we messed up and wound up introducing a soothing musical innertube, and the name stuck.
So here we are, hundreds of years later, still talking
to interesting people about their interesting lives.
Difference makers who really make a difference.
Our guest is Carrie Rickey. She's been my friend for about 30 years. It seems like actually more like 20. She is an expert on movies. She's an expert on the arts. She's written about everything from rock and roll to Philip Guston. And we're very happy to have her here. We're going to be talking mostly about movies, but I wanted to talk about her pedigree for just a moment. Where did you go? Did you go to Hollywood High School?
North Hollywood.
North Hollywood. Good. Did you know anybody famous there?
I know, some of the people I went to high school with went into the movies, like Jerry Hauser, who was in Summer of 42. I guess the most famous person was Harry Anderson, who did a sitcom called Night Court. He was a magician and stand-up comedian, alas, no longer with us. And he and I used to make our side hustle at the time was to make pilot for quiz shows at CBS. One of them was called Countdown. And we dressed up in astronaut uniforms. And we pretended we were spinning. And the hostess of Countdown was Ruth Warwick, who was Orson Welles' first wife in Citizen Kane. So that was pretty weird.
Now, were you guys actual pretend contestants?
We were contestants for the pilot, but no one bought the pilot, alas. But I think we each made $2,000 in savings bonds.
You got paid and you invested in America.
Well, I got paid, and I think that paid a couple of years tuition at UC then, and you know how cheap it was then.
Yes, and do I recall correctly that you studied with Manny Farber? I seem to remember this at UC San Diego.
UC San Diego, yes. I went to the University of California further south of you guys.
Studying with him was like getting an insight into the future at that time of what writing about movies was going to be like, wasn't it? I mean, he has been so influential.
He has and is. And it was basically like learning painting from Jackson Pollock.
Well, you've been so many other places since then. I mean, you've written for the Village Voice, I think, the Boston Herald, and of course, for so many years for the Inquirer.
Philadelphia Inquirer, not National.
Right. Don't you hate it when people go, "Oh, you write for the Inquirer"? No, the right. I mean, it's just I, not E. You have to explain it. It's amazing. But you've written about so many things so well. But we're here to talk about movies in a time of coronavirus, and we would love to hear what you, first of all, to start off with, what movies you've been watching, and rewatching.
Well, my daughter Cora has introduced us to a new, I guess, genre of movie, the Netflix romance, which is movies like Murder Mystery with Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler, and then a very funny one called Lovebirds with Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani, and they're very implausible and very, very funny movies that involve crime, murder, and love. And so it kind of unifies people who like crime, people who like romantic comedies. They're this new genre. And all three of my husband and Cora and I really have been enjoying them. And then my husband and I the other night, and you two Southern California boys would appreciate this. We watched Echoes in the Canyon, which is Jacob Dylan hosts it, and he interviews, Crosby, Stills and Nash and the Beach Boys. And talks about that time in the 1960s when the Mamas and the Papas and the Beach Boys and Crosby, Stills and Nash were ascendant, and he gets together with musicians of his age to sing and pay tribute to this era. And I have to say, Jacob Dylan may have even less charisma than his father, but he's handsome and he holds down the fort, and you hear a lot of great music. So we like that a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's been a blitz of rock documentaries by people involved in that movement. The one that I haven't seen yet is a documentary about Joni Mitchell.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic. And there's one about Linda Ronstadt that's also fantastic.
Yes, and I think the one about the one by and about David Crosby is very sad. Remember My Name, I think it's called. It's very sad, but it's really pretty. It's a great adjunct to Echoes in the Valley. Don, have you seen Echoes yet? Have you seen that movie?
I have not seen that, no, but I'd be interested in finding out what the two liver donors think about David Crosby hanging on. The other thing I was going to ask, Carrie, is all of the stuff that you've talked about so far has been on Netflix. Are the TV or the streaming services going to be our next big source of movies?
Well, not mine, but for the time being, yes. I mean, I watch a lot of Turner Classic Movies, and that's been a lifeline for me. My daughter's lifeline has been the new movie Scoob, the new Scooby-Doo movie, because she's an eternal
Does she recommend it? Does she recommend it?
Do you recommend it, Cora?
I mean, if you're a fan of Scooby-Doo, I recommend it.
She recommends it for fans of Scooby-Doo.
Ruh-roh. It's, you mentioned Turner Classic Movies, and just, I'm a big Twitter fanatic and follow a lot of people on Twitter and on Facebook. I see people watching movies that they always wanted to watch but didn't get a chance, and there was when Turner, every time they run Casablanca, which they do, I think, every 2 weeks now. Don't you think? I mean, it's on a lot. And there's this explosion of people talking about that movie, that it still seems, and these is people that are a third of my age. And
it's a great movie. I mean, I think it's the drinking buddy of American movies. You could always, have a couple rounds with it. And it's funny.
It's very funny.
Do you think there's a deal with Turner Classic Movies is showing kids who are, according to studio heads, never, ever, ever going to watch anything in black and white, showing them this movie history and some very, very good movies that just happen to be in black and white and happen to be guys wearing hats. Do you think that kids are turned on by the story and they just get carried away in the movie regardless of the trappings?
Excellent question, Donald. I think I have two test cases in my house. One is 24 or 23 and the other one is 34. And they sometimes put up with getting educated and sometimes like the movies very much. I know that, about a year ago, I showed Cora Cora really likes horror movies. And I showed her I Walked with a Zombie and Cat People, and she really, really enjoyed them. Does she like them as well as the horror movies that were made in her generation? I don't think so, but she's interested.
The cat movie that you mentioned, I remember first seeing that. I think it's tremendous. I love that movie.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great horror movies of all time. Made really for 5 cents. And they never showed the cat.
Right, there's no cat.
No, it's all shadows. That was the interesting thing to me, was that it was all shadows.
And it scares the bejesus out of you. Or it did me.
Oh, yeah. I once sat a bunch of teens, watched one of my very favorite movies. I think it's one of your foundational movies, Carrie, Shadow of a Doubt.
Oh, my favorite Hitchcock.
Mine too. That's my favorite Hitchcock. It is too. And they were about halfway through. I looked over at the couch and they were all in that posture, leaning forward, eyes big, wanting to know what's next. It really got it. So that was a black and white that seemed to work for them, and it, I think it would work for anybody. It's very sneaky.
I think if you want to show people who don't like black and white movies, black and white, I think A Hard Day's Night, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton are the gateway drugs.
I do remember in college being in love with Buster Keaton and watching The General as part of a class assignment and just falling in love with it. So I came home and it was going to be on one of the PBS stations. And I gathered my brothers together and said, "Oh, you really like this?" And of course it was silent and they drifted off. But coincidentally, about 5 years ago, one of those brothers, when we were just chatting randomly about things, said, "Hey, I saw that Buster Keaton thing with the train that you had us all sit down. And I didn't like it then, but I really like it now." And I thought, well, some people eventually grow into the movie, I guess.
Well, when I was a kid, I never watched war movies because my father didn't, who served in the World War II, did not like them. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I came to film school without having seen much in the way of war movies. And it didn't occur to me until Memorial Day this weekend that I had never seen a war movie with my father. And then I remembered he hated them. So I belatedly got interested in war movies and decided I kind of like the ones that aren't like The Longest Day, like God's Eye, Looking Down, but I like the war movies where you're on the ground with the infantry.
The one that I like the most still is All Quiet.
Oh, All Quiet on the Western Front is fantastic. That's not a war movie. That's a conscientious objector movie.
Yeah, it's anything but a war movie.
I just think because you are with the soldiers, in a way that you're rarely with the soldiers in movies. It's just, and it's still a heartbreaker. I don't know. I think you're right though. It's sort of sui generis. It's about why we should hate war.
Right. Exactly.
Swinging over, I just wanted to make sure that I touched base on a very new movie. I saw that you had some nice things to say about The High Note with Tracy Ellis Ross, which I think is on demand.
It's a very pricey on demand title. It's not great, but it's lovable. And Tracy Ellis Ross is the daughter of Diana Ross, and she's very, very funny. And she's playing a pop diva, not unlike her mother. And another famous Hollywood daughter, Dakota Johnson, daughter of Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith, is playing her personal assistant. And you think it's going to be like The Devil Wears Prada, but it's not, because the two women actually respect each other. And it's also, like everything right now, preposterous, and it would never happen in real life. But there's kind of, it's just nice to see an older woman and a middle-aged woman and a younger woman on screen who are all about work and joy in their work.
Oh yeah.
And I haven't seen that much of that in the movies. That's
a really good point.
Do you think movies, I know everybody is decrying the blockbuster, the Marvel movies and the cape and superhero movies, but do you think, especially when you get into the Netflixes and the new movies that are made for streaming, that they're much more on a personal level, that they're talking about characters rather than the big picture?
Well, I would agree with that, but I know people who would disagree. I have someone in my home, someone who's sitting very nearby, who is a big fan of the Avengers and the superhero movies, but she has very broad tastes. She likes, I think she likes all movies. She likes all foods and all movies. She's not just a meat and potato or a Spider-Man, X-Man girl,
Well, I have to, total confession here. one of the things that I did, and John will know this, when I was in high school, was I had about 7,000 Marvel comic books in my bedroom. And so I'm interested in looking at these movies when they come out. And I have a son who picked up on that and is also he's into Star Wars and Marvel and anything else like that. Well, one of the things that I thought about the Marvel movies when I was watching them is that they are spectacle, but they do concentrate on the characters and make something of the characters and their relationships.
Affirmative nods in the room. I really, really enjoyed the Iron Man series, or the first two, I guess. And once there was all these, the Avengers movies have been a little less enjoyable for me because it's like everyone has a cameo, it seems, and then there's a big super fight. But I do confess to having enjoyed Wonder Woman. I mean, I like some of these movies a great deal, but I like the character focus. I'm not as interested in the ultimate battle between good and evil because they all seem the same.
One of the things I think Marvel has tried to do, and I really admire it, is they try at least occasionally to give backstories to the superheroes that are not what you'd expect. Like Jessica Jones, that show is actually a lot about abuse and its effects. It's not just about being a superhero, which she is, but it's also about what abuse did to her in her prior life, which is very original. I've never seen anything quite like that.
Well, I think I like Captain America and Iron Man, and I kind of lost it at the Avengers.
Captain America was interesting because, well, even in in the second one, I guess it was, Robert Redford was there doing a sort of a reverse of the characters that he had always played in those political thrillers.
Right.
So let me ask you a question then about the future of film. I was scanning the television last night, and I landed on, I guess it was Extra. Is that the one that Billy Bush does, the whatever show? And he had Jeffrey Katzenberg on, and he said, what are we going to do when everybody goes back to making movies? And Jeffrey Katzenberg says, there doesn't need to be 60 or 70 people on a set. That can just be 20. So we'll get right back into it and do what we were doing before. Does that sound like something that is realistic?
I think if you're doing a special effects heavy movie, yeah, because that's like 3 people and a computer. I don't know. As you mentioned before, the Netflix movies are very character heavy, and you could have just 2 or 3 characters and build it around that. And those movies that my family's been watching have been, pretty successful, I think. Although Netflix never tells you how many people they have watching their movies. They're very quiet about that. But I will say I'm not going to go to the Netflix produced the Martin Scorsese movie.
The Irishman.
The Irishman, thank you. The Netflix produced it. It's fantastic as a movie, and it's kind of uninteresting on television.
Have you seen it in the theater, Carrie? Did you see it?
Oh, God, I saw it, at Lincoln Center, opening night of the New York Film Festival on one of the nicest screens in America. It was fantastic because you're in their skin.
Yeah, because I had that feeling too. I kept wishing I could see it in a full-size theater. I saw it on TV. Actually, I saw Roma on television. I really wish I'd seen that in a theater that could show it. So that's interesting. So maybe when we all get back, maybe there's some movies we ought to see on the big screen.
Yeah, I think that both Roma and The Irishman really were great movies that worked much better on the big screen. First of all, they both have so much detail in them that you really can't see. Even if you say, well, I have a 60-inch screen, I'm not seeing it on my 48-inch screen,
Right.
Let's talk about the future of movies. We're getting into a reopening phase now after the coronavirus thing, but I've read where some of the theater chains don't want to reopen because they don't have product to show, and they also don't want to reopen with 10 people in the seats.
Well, there is product. There was a lot of product slated for summer. Some of it's being held till
Yeah, because movies are made well in advance. I mean, they they
right,
sort of pre-schedule out a long
right.
way. Yeah.
There is a lot of product. I think in about a year, there or 18 months, there's going to be a lack of product.
A slump.
But there'll probably be some quickie pictures made. I'm really not a pundit. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the future holds for movies. I just do like the social aspect of movies, and I like the scale of movies. Watching movies on television is a great thing for a family to do or people on a date to do, but you're missing I guess you're just missing the laughter. Hearing 500 people laugh at the same joke is very, very moving.
There's nothing like it.
And hearing a lot of people cry or gasp, when people share the same experience, it's very moving. And I think all the three of us grew up in a 3-network universe, so we shared a lot of the same TV shows, and we shared a lot of the same news. But to not have people sharing the same movies and TV shows now, I think it's one of the contributing factors of a fractured country. We're not sharing, the same primal experiences in the way we used to. We're not sharing the Jimmy Cagney movies or the Elvis movies or we were not. And certain things that girls of my generation did. We all watched Haley Mills movies.
Oh my God, I was so in love with Haley Mills. Oh my God, I loved her.
And when we grew up, they assumed boys would see Haley Mills movies because she was cute. And girls liked her Haley Mills movies because we wanted to be her. So,
I remember, speaking of a crowd gasp, you'll love this. Haley Mills's first kiss on film was in the Moon Spinners, and you could hear the entire crowd gasp as one. That Haley Mills, that a boy kissed her.
And a very cute boy.
He really was. Was it Horst Buckholz?
No, it was Peter something, I think.
Oh, Peter something. Yeah, he was really.
Yeah, I could look it up.
He was something special. But no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, yeah. So you did have that. You had what we used to call back in the academy proxemics going on, which is hard to have if you're just 3 people sitting on a couch. That's just a different universe. I would like those days to come back too.
Well, maybe that's like wanting pinball to come back in the era of Call of Duty. I don't know, but I'm not nostalgic for the big screen. That's how movies are made, for the big screen. Yeah. I mean, it's the difference between seeing, let's say, M&A painting on your computer,
right,
and seeing this huge, beautiful Manet painting at the museum, where you can see the surface and really look at the color, and it's different.
Yeah, there are people out there who decry the little boxes that were put in now, where at the multiplex to see a movie, as opposed to the big old grand theaters that we used to go to.
Well, the multiplexes are because marketing departments took over, studio product in around 1980. They made a big mistake with E.T., the Steven Spielberg movie, because they thought only kids would see it. And when the Universal was totally stunned when it turned out that families and older people were into the movie too. And that niche marketing went on, and I just remember I can't remember, it was in the 90s. My husband and I went to the movies, and you could see like Black teenagers peeling off to see Menace to Society, and you could see white older people going to see Grumpy Old Men, and we were all going into our little box. And that was supposed to maximize the revenues. But I just think making movies that everyone can share is a better bet.
I get that sense when I'm watching, strangely enough, when I'm watching Turner Classic Movies, I get that sense that a lot of these movies were for everybody.
Well, they were made. They were made in a period before the rating system, so everyone could see them. That's why in so many movies there's a dog at the beginning, so kids get into it. Or I mean, the dog Asta from the Thin Man movies was invented to get kids to invest in the movie.
So I want you to be proud of me, Carrie. So this pandemic, I have rediscovered an awful lot of movies that I have loved for years, but I hadn't seen in a long time. So I went back and saw, with a lot of people evidently being there, that evidently was a huge hit for TCM when they last showed it.
That's a great movie.
And a lot of people who watch that film, I noticed on Twitter, because that's what I do. I go on Twitter now after a movie plays live on TCM and see what people say, right? It's really interesting, very instructive. And they were saying, I'd heard of Peter Sellers. He's pretty good. It made me feel good to see that.
Neither of my children has ever seen a Peter Sellers movie. I can't believe it. But actually, one of them saw Dr. Strangelove. Never mind. But he's amazing in Lolita and Dr. Strangelove and Being There. Those are 3, or shall we say 12 incredible performances. Because he plays multiple characters in Lolita and Dr. Strangelove.
I do remember my mother being very, very angry at me for going to see The Party with Peter Sellers because she had heard there was a topless woman in it. Oh. So I got hell for that, but I enjoyed the movie anyway.
It's a very funny movie. Doggy Num Nums.
Yes.
And Don, I think that you and I and our pals from high school, we all went to see The Producers when it first got into theaters. We made a big thing of all going together to see it, and we had seen a movie but that's a movie where the whole place was just rocking with laughter.
Oh yeah, and I still remember being in college and a bunch of us getting together on Halloween and going to the local theater to see one of the horror movies. That's a group experience that maybe we don't talk enough about, Carrie, and that is when people get together and go as a group rather than just the random audiences experiencing it together, but people actually making a point of going to see a particular movie.
Oh, it's amazing. One of my favorite movie memories of all time is going to see Legally Blonde with a young woman I mentored, and I told her she'd really like it, and she said, "Oh, take me to see it." And the audience was like about 98% female, and there's a big plot turn that involves the chemistry of hair permanence, and all the women gasp in the theater. And the man sitting next to us whispered, "You can have to explain this to me. I didn't get this reference." And it was like so funny. And I had to explain to him, well, the woman on the stand said that her alibi is that she took a shower after she got a hair permanent, and every woman knows that you can't wash a permanent for like 48 hours. And he said, "This is common knowledge among women." And I went, "Yeah, there's a lot of arcane knowledge among men that and golfing that I wouldn't know." And right. But when I heard all the women gasp in the theater, it was amazing. It was like an Agatha Christie movie or something. Everyone knew.
So we're all cooped up. And just off the top of your head, what are some movies that you want people to make sure they see when we're all just sitting around here?
Well, my favorite movie of all time, if I have to name one, would be Buster Keaton's Sherlock Jr. It's 45 minutes. It's perfection. It's very, very funny. If you've seen Woody Allen's Purple Rose of Cairo, you probably, it influenced Woody Allen's movie and a lot of other movies. But it's a movie about movies, and it's very, very funny, and it's clever, and it's so beautifully thought out. And every scene, there's like 3 jokes a minute, and there's more jokes per minute than in one of the Airplane movies. And it's just wonderful.
No, I'd have to second that. It's an amazing movie,
Yeah.
and people think of him as a comic, but he was way more than a comic. He was a
he was a great technician. He was someone who basically understood the camera, everything the camera could do, and then made it do more. He did his own special effects.
Yes, going back to the general, one of my favorite scenes in that, he's escaping on a train, and he has his girlfriend with him. And he's desperately trying to feed the firebox in the locomotive with wood to keep it going so that he can outrun the people that he's running away from. And he's taking huge logs and he's throwing them in there and he's throwing them in there. And the girlfriend decides to help. So she picks up a stick and hands it to him. And the look that he gives her, just this deadpan, okay. And he throws the stick in, but just the look that he gives her, it brought the house down. Yes. Again, he had comic timing. He had the facial expressions, even though it's silent. He knew what he was doing, and he did it very well.
Buster Keaton movies can be seen by people of all ages. One of my favorite features right now on TCM is the Midnight on Sunday. Jacqueline Stewart, who's a professor at the University of Chicago and a wonderful scholar and just a wonderful person, hosts the Silent Movie Hour. And she's showing a lot of stuff that's fantastic. And another silent movie I think everyone should see is The Crowd.
Oh, my God. I was just thinking that, Carrie. I was just thinking. Tell everybody. Oh, my God. Yeah.
It's just it's a sad, but amazing movie made in 1925 by King Vidor about America and a young man who wants to be unique and special and who gets lost in the crowd in very sad ways. And it's such a vision of collective humanity and individualism. I'm not making it sound interesting, but it's not a movie experience. Watching it is an experience because you feel so close and so bonded with the main character.
Some of the most beautiful cinematography I've seen. Also. Yeah, it's amazing. Beautiful movie.
Oh, another silent comedian we should never forget is Harold Lloyd, who is every bit as great as Keaton and Chaplin.
Oh yeah, I think the freshman is right up there with. It's one of the funniest.
The
films.
Freshman, The Kid Brother, Safety Last. They're all
Safety Last. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, my daughter Cora loved Safety Last.
I've tried to get Don to hang from the minute hand of a large industrial clock several times, but he just for some reason has never wanted to do it.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where I was afraid my pants would fall down and I'd be embarrassed.
Excellent.
True. But those are movies that everyone should see. I think a lot of people, like my husband, like real life stories. So, we've been watching a lot of biographical movies. We tried to watch one on Trotsky the other night, and it was not very good. It was a little too experimental for my husband's taste. But I really think a movie everyone should see is Malcolm X, which is just Spike Lee's movie it's fantastic. It's beautifully shot, and it's shot in the motion picture style of every era it covers. And if it's set in the 1920s, it looks like a 1920s black and white adventure movie. When it's set in the 1930s, it looks like a Jimmy Cagney movie. In the 1940s, like a very colorful Vincente Minnelli musical. It's just a fantastic artistic, political, and acting achievement. Denzel Washington's best performance.
Denzel is amazing in it, Carrie, and I just wanted to say my favorite part in that movie in many ways, and it's a movie of great parts, that you could name so many of them. It's when he does his hijra to Mecca. There's just
oh my God. It's Spike Lee is the only director who's ever gotten into Mecca. And
is that true?
It's beautiful. I believe so.
Wow.
Have you ever seen Mecca in a movie before? I haven't.
No.
It's exquisite, and it's sweeping. It's like a sweeping epic in the Lawrence of Arabia.
Exactly. Oh, what a
and
great!
We don't have a lot of movies like that, but my husband loves biography, and we watch a lot of them. And that's one I think everyone should see. It's beautiful. And I think a lot of people are missing sports right now. And and especially baseball and basketball. So I would really suggest Love and Basketball, Gina Smith, Bythewood's movie about a young girl who wants to be a professional basketball player, but the WNBA doesn't exist yet, and it's great. And speaking of autobiographical movies, Ava DuVernay's Selma is fantastic, and really shows you moving history. Another, which biographies do you guys like?
John, what's a good biographical movie that you like? She's named my favorite one in Malcolm X. No, she has.
I'm trying to think. Somebody Up There Likes Me. I love that movie. I've always liked that movie.
That's a lot of fun.
It's a boxing movie, but there's a lot of heart and soul in it.
Well, I guess Raging Bull would be into this genre, wouldn't it?
Raging Bull. If you miss boxing, yes, it is one of the great boxing movies. But there are so many.
Somehow the two guys picked the boxing movies. Don't ask me why.
Well, I picked Girls in Basketball. There's a lot of really great sports movies. And if you miss soccer, there's Bend It Like Beckham,
that's a wonderful movie.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that was Keira Knightley's first movie, wasn't it?
It wasn't not her first, but it was her first major part. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And Parminder Nagra and Archie Punjabi are also in that. That's a wonderful movie by Gurinder Chadha. And
there's always that thing every year where we need more women directors, we need more Black directors, and all that. Are we getting to that point now?
Well, thank you for the question. I've been following the numbers since 1980, and in 1980, I don't believe there was a single African American director who made a movie that made to the top 250 box office titles, and only one, I guess that year, fewer than 1% of the directors of the top 250 movies were female. And now that percentage has gone from about 1.5% to about 9%. So that's 40 years. Is it opening? I would say it's open to crack.
Tiny little.
It's not a door. It's a crack the window is cracked a little bit, but it's not an ajar door, let's say.
The amazing thing is that people name female movie makers always with this, still today, always with an overtone of, and how about that? Almost as though it's,
well, they're called female movie makers instead of directors,
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, Jane, female movie maker Jane Campion, it just sort of director Jane Campion,
right.
Carrie, you must have run into, in your line of work, many, many, many actors, directors. What are your couple of your favorite stories of having to interview these people or having to see them on the job, so to speak?
Well, I try to go to movie sets never, so I haven't seen a lot on the job. I mean, I was on the set of Scorsese's the movie with Robert De Niro and Jerry, A King of Comedy. Sorry. I was on the set of King of Comedy, and it was interesting to see how Scorsese works with Robert De Niro and how collaborative that collaboration is. But movie sets are places where time goes backwards or time stands still, and you hear the same line of dialogue over and over and over again, and it's you feel like you're just trapped. It's Groundhog Day. It's just Groundhog Day. So I try to interview people offset whenever possible. I came up in the industry at a time when I realized the older actors, like Robert Mitchum and James Mason and Bette Davis, if I got to interview them, I could interview them for an afternoon or a day. They were so happy to be talked to. And the younger ones, like Tom Hanks and Denzel, were a little, I could get a half hour, 45 minutes with them. And, certain superstars, like someone like Harrison Ford is so shy and hates to talk about himself. He would rather have, 100% of his teeth root canal rather than talk to the press. So I don't know. It's everyone's different. Jackie Chan was a high point, I will say, because he's very animated and he likes to act out. He likes to pantomime his English, and it was a lot of fun. And he when I teased him about being maybe a little old to do certain tricks, he would run into the bedroom of the hotel and show me how he could still do a triple flip or something on the bed. He was exuberant. He was a little joy bomb, as they say. So, some interviews are a lot of fun, but it's very hard to set up an interview where people can be themselves. And that's a hard thing to do. And some people like Chan, at the first time I interviewed him, his English wasn't perfect. So he was, acting everything out with his hands and his body. And
I could just see him doing
wonderful.
That. Yes.
It was fantastic. Anyhow, I interviewed a lot of people, and some of the interviews are great, and some not so great. But I don't want to badmouth anyone.
Excellent.
A person I've always wanted to get a really long interview with was Diane Keaton, who I have interviewed, and she is so funny but in a very emotional way. She could make you cry and giggle at the same time. She's very emotionally connected, and she had rather recently adopted her second child when I interviewed her, and I was like crying for half of the interview when she was talking about what it felt like to be the mother of a son, and because she had grown up mostly with sisters. And she said she never understood men till being a mother of a man.
Wow.
And that was, I asked her to describe it, and I can't do her justice, and I don't have the piece in front of me, but she was really moving. And she said, I never realized how differently we're socialized, men and women are socialized, and how different our brains work. And then suddenly I have this person who's part of me and is so fundamentally different. And it was amazing. She was very wise.
I'm so glad to hear that she's like that, because that's a person I want to be like that. No, really, that's the way I feel about her. And I'm so glad to know that in person, when talking to you, that's how she comes across. That's lovely.
Yeah. And Meg Ryan, likewise. I think the comedians were very moving, and sometimes Laurence Olivier always said he couldn't do comedy, and the people he was most in awe of were people like Bette Midler and Danny Kaye, with whom he is said to have had an affair. But Laurence Olivier said, "I'm not funny, but I look at these people and they're just amazing." And I think that the comedians often who don't get taken seriously, are underneath everything very serious and moving.
Death is easy, comedy is hard.
Yes.
That's
As Edmund Kean has been said to have said.
Carrie, you have been so generous with your insights to all these great movies that you have name checked, and you've had not only a great career, but it sounds like a great time, and are still having. It's just, don't you think? I mean, it's just the greatest line of work you could be in.
Yeah, so on some days it is. Although movies seem like an endangered species. But thank you. It's been great floating with you, my inner tubes.
Both of our listeners are going to really love this episode, so thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube.
The Musical Innertube is available everywhere good podcasts are found. Listen on your favorite platform and give us a good rating.
You can subscribe to the podcast on our website, musicalinnertube.com.
There you can listen to all of our podcasts, see pictures and biographies of our guests, and contact us. You could even leave us a voicemail.
And don't forget to leave your email address on our Talk to the Two page on the website, and we'll send you a preview of who's coming to talk with us by email, just so you're prepared.
That's musicalinnertube.com.
And as always, thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for our theme music.